Hey everyone, I hope you're doing well. Tom here, and today we're going to figure out if I can beat Pokémon Sun with only an Alolan Vulpix. Alolan Vulpix was one of the regional variants introduced in Sun and Moon, and I gotta say, I really like this one. I really like that they went with more of a real-world counterpart, with it being an Arctic Fox, rather than something more fantasy-like, like they did with Dugtrio. But let's get on to the stats. Alolan Vulpix is more of a speedy, special type Pokemon, with most of its stats being in speed and special defense. I would have liked special attack to be a little higher considering that ice is not the best type defensively, but I can make this work. Looking at its moves, and it's not too bad, we get some good ice moves, but that's really it. Vulpix has a very shallow move pool in terms of type diversity, and the TMs aren't much better. Considering Vulpix evolves into an ice fairy type, it's kind of weird that we only get one fairy type move, and it doesn't even do any damage. It would have also been nice to have Calm Mind, but oh well. Before we get started, let's go over the rules. I can only use one Alolan Vulpix in battle. I cannot use items in battle unless they're held items. And finally, I cannot use glitches. Let's get started. So after some intro stuff and some story related stuff, we met up with the Kahuna and get to choose our Pokemon. I chose to replace Poplio because our rival in this game actually chooses a starter you're strong against. So by choosing Poplio, that gives him Litten, which is strong against Alolan Vulpix. At least I think I replaced Poplio. The game's kind of flipping between the two and I think it's a little confused. But I got my Alolan Vulpix and named her Frostnibble because I thought that'd be a cute nickname. After that, we had a rival battle and unfortunately lost. We start off with Powder Snow and it just doesn't do enough damage against Litten. That and Litten has Ember which just kills us. But we're allowed to lose this one so we get to move on. On the next day, we're shown how to catch a Pokemon on Route 1, and I take a moment to look over my Vulpix's stats. I got a Bashful nature, which doesn't change the stats at all. We also got the Snow Cloak ability, which boosts evasion and hail. This could be useful later in the run. But I take this opportunity to grind up a bit. This route is great for us to grind on because Powder Snow is super effective against most of the Pokemon here. I grinded up to level 5 and went into our second rival battle, and it went pretty similarly to as the last one. I was able to take out his Pichu, but his Litten's Ember is just too much for us to handle. After that, Lily took me over to the professor's lab where I got the Pokedex. I did some side stuff including the Poke School and dealing with some Team Skull grunts, but they weren't hard. I made my way to Route 2 and into the first trial. The Totem Pokemon was actually pretty easy. See, at this point I had learned Icy Wind, a move that can hit both opposing Pokemon at the same time. It does split the damage, but that's okay. So I just kept using Icy Wind over and over again until both Pokemon went down. And with that, we've beaten the first trial. I made my way back to Iki Town and it's time for us to battle against the Kahuna. This is going to be a tricky fight because he uses fighting type Pokemon and has a fighting type Z move. Alright, first attempt and his Mankey takes me out with ease. I gotta grind. I come back at level 26 and am able to get around his Mankey, but his Crabrawler is now the issue. See, he uses a fighting type Z move that can pretty much take me out in one hit. So I gotta go back and grind some more. I grinded up to level 29 where I get Aurora Beam, and I got this run. He starts off with a Mankey and goes down to an Aurora Beam and an Ice Shard. Crabrawler's up next, and he uses Leer on me while I use Aurora Beam and Ice Shard to knock him out. Lastly is Makuhita. He uses Fake Out, flinching me, and I end up using a combination of Aurora Beam and Confuse Ray to knock him out. And with that, we've beaten our first Kahuna. I hopped onto a boat with Hal and made my way down to Route 5. I ran into Gladion and his fight wasn't too hard. His Zubat went down to one Aurora Beam and his Type Null did nearly take me out but ended up going down to a couple Aurora Beams and an Ice Shard. I made my way to the water trial with Lana. I went through taking out the little Wishy-Washis, then for the real trial, the Totem Wishy-Washi. I ran into some troubles with this fight. The first fight didn't go well. For the second battle, I tried rushing down the little Wishy-Washi, but Alola Mullet comes out next. She's super tanky and can heal a Totem Pokemon with Heal Pulse, so that run was essentially done. On the third attempt, I started off by confusing the Totem Pokemon, then I just kept using Hex until it snapped out of confusion. Then rinse and repeat until it transformed into its smaller form. After that, I just finished it off with Ice Shard to knock it out. Then finished the other one off the same way. And with that, we've beaten the second trial. After that, I did some more side stuff. Next up is the fire trial, and this one was a doozy. See, you have 3 battles in a row without healing. The first Marowak is fine, but the Hiker either takes me out or deals enough damage for Salazzle to take me out. I gotta grind. So I came back at level 34, and realized I just have to fight the totem Pokemon. Turns out if you lose against the totem Pokemon, you don't have to restart the whole trial. Kiawe even tells you about the Pokemon and its strategy. What a nice guy. But I still can't beat the totem Pokemon. I just take too much damage, so I gotta grind. I come back at level 38 and got this run where I critted the totem Pokemon with an extra sensory, and then finished off the other Slandit with another extra sensory. But with that luck, we've beaten the third trial. Up next is the grass trial. I found all of Mallow's ingredients and the totem Pokemon appeared. This fight was really hard. See, I can take out Lurantis with 2 ice beams, but they call for a cast form which either headbutts me to death or uses Sunny Day Weather Ball to finish me off. I gotta grind again. I come back at level 40 and I ended up one-shotting the Lurantis with Ice Beam. Well, that was anticlimactic, but with that, we've beaten the 4th trial. After that, I made my way through Diglett's Cave, dealt with some Team Skull Grunts, picked up the Eviolite, dealt with some more Team Skull Grunts, and met up with Olivia, and already I'm going to need to grind. It's kind of the same situation as the last Kahuna battle, where I can beat her first Pokemon, but her second Pokemon can go for a super effective Z move, which even with Eviolite, Vulpix just can't handle. I come back at level 44 and Lycanroc still kills me with a Z move. So I switched the Eviolite out for Quick Claw, cause Eviolite's just not cutting it right now. Then I got this run. She starts off with her Nose Pass and goes for Thunder Wave. I go for an Ice Beam, taking a little over half her health. I finished her off with another Ice Beam. Next up is a Lycanroc. I used Confuse Ray and he ended up hitting himself. After that, I ended up taking him down with Ice Beam. Lastly is Boldore. I used Ice Beam and ended up freezing him. I finished him off with a Hex, getting a Quick Claw boost as well. Well, that was a nice finisher. And with that, we've beaten the second Kahuna. I headed over to meet up with Fava, and he takes us to the Aether Foundation where we bumped into an Ultra Beast. It was actually a pretty easy fight. After that, we went to Ula Ula Island, and there I had a battle against Hall. He ended up beating me using a Fire-type Z move, but we can lose this fight and still continue on. I did some side stuff, then I had a fight against Mullane. I got really lucky on this battle. Not only did he miss his strong-type steel moves, but I also got a freeze on his Dugtrio. Electric trial time, and there isn't too much to talk about this. The audio test was a little weird because I usually record this game muted, but the Totem Vikavolt went down with ease, along with the Charger Bug he called in. Well, with that, we've beaten the 5th trial. It's Guzma time, boys, and this fight was surprisingly difficult. See, Golisopod does a lot of damage, and both of his Pokemon have a priority move, which means if I don't have a priority move, they will always outspeed me, which makes those types of moves perfect for finishing off low health Pokemon. I need the grind. I came back at level 48 and got this run. He starts off with Golisopod, and I used a couple extra sensories to trigger his emergency exit ability to force him to switch out. Up next is Ariados. I took him out with a couple extra sensories. Golisopod comes back out, and I finish him off with another extra sensory. That was a fun fight. I really like seeing the AI use different strategies. Like playing around Golisopod's emergency exit ability and his priority move was a lot of fun. I made my way through the connecting routes and headed over to the Ghost Trial. I gotta say, I really like the gimmick of this gym. Using the Pokésnap to take photos of the ghost types was a really fun concept, and I wish they did more with it. But anyways, the Totem Mimikyu was pretty difficult. The problem is that my first turn is essentially used up by Mimikyu's disguise ability, and not only does that give Mimikyu a free hit on me, but it also gives her a chance to call for another Pokemon. And she does a lot of damage as is, so I gotta grind. I came back at level 52 and got the TM for Hail, and still no dice. I did get a win with Sheer Cold, but that felt way too cheesy and uninteresting to use, so back to grinding. I came back at level 58 and got this run. The battle starts, and right away Mimikyu uses Mimic, which fails because I haven't gone yet. I go for an extra sensory to break their disguise, and she calls in her Haunter. Mimikyu goes for Play Rough as I go for Hex, landing a crit to knock her out. Haunter uses Night Slash on me, taking about a quarter of my health. I finished him off with an extra sensory. And with that, we've beaten the 6th trial. I did some more story stuff and made my way through Po Town and up to Guzma, and got really lucky with the flinches and took his Pokemon out with ease. After that, we have a fight with Nanu, the kahuna of this island. This was another fight that I got really lucky on. I started off with Hail, then I went for Ice Beam, taking his Sableye out with a crit. His Persian couldn't land a hit on me and went down to an Ice Beam, then his Krokorok went down in a single Ice Beam. And with that, we've beaten the 3rd kahuna. We made our way to the Aether Foundation. We had a couple fights with their grunts, but we made our way through to another Guzma fight. I gave him a couple tries and still no dice. I need to grind. I come back at level 66 and still no dice. The issue is that now he has a pincer with Brick Break, which takes most of my health away when he uses it. And his Golisopod can easily finish me off with that priority move. I come back at level 73 and get this run. Golisopod is up first. I used Extra Sensory to trigger his emergency exit, forcing him to switch into Pincer. I use Ice Beam, just barely missing the kill. He goes for Brick Fake, taking me to about half health. He went down to another Ice Beam. Masquerade's up next and went down to an Ice Beam. Golisopod's back out and uses First Impression, just barely missing the kill on me, but goes down to another Extra Sensory. After that, we go through some story stuff and make it to Pony Island, and fought against Hapu. She specializes in ground type Pokemon which are weak against ice moves, so this was a reasonably easy fight. We started off with a little bit of a weather war with her Dugtrio, but Ice Beam takes both Dugtrio and Mudsdale down. I had to chip away at her Gastrodon for a while as she used Recover, healing herself up. Flygon was out next and immediately went down to an Ice Beam. And with that, we've beaten our last Kahuna. Up next is the Dragon Trial. It was a little tricky. See, both the Totem Pokemon and the Called Pokemon have a fighting type move, which does a lot of damage to me. Right now, I only have single targeting moves, so I decided to teach Vulpix Blizzard. That way it hits both the Totem Pokemon and the Called Pokemon. After that, this trial was actually a breeze. I started off with Hail, which makes Blizzard 100% accurate, then just kept using Blizzard over and over again until the Totem Pokemon went down. And with that, we've beaten the last trial. We then go through some more story stuff. I ended up going into a wormhole and had a fight against Lusamine, and this fight was terrible. All of her Pokemon get a totem buff, and on top of that, most of her Pokemon have some way to get their health back. She also has a Clefable and a Milotic, both of which are pretty tanky Pokemon, so I gotta grind. I come back at level 86 and still no dice. I came back at level 92 and got this run. She starts off with Clefable, and I set up Hail as she goes for Moonblast. I went for Blizzard, taking about a third of her health away, then she goes for Metronome and gets Night Daze. It doesn't do too much, so I was able to finish her off with a Blizzard. Beware is up next, and they go down to an Extra Sensory. Next up is Miss Magius. I set up another Hail and she lands a Power Gem. She then goes for Pain Split, which ends up healing me. Not really sure what the logic there was, but I finished her off with Hex. Lilligant's up next and she goes down to a Blizzard. Lastly is Milotic. We get stuck in this cycle where I used Extra Sensory and she used Recover to heal back her health. I eventually whittle her down for the knockout. That was such a grindy battle, but with that, we finished up the evil teams. Next up is our last Gladium battle, and all of his Pokemon went down with ease. His Crobat went down to an Extra Sensory, his Lucario went down to 2 Extra Sensories, his Weavile went down to Hail and 2 Blizzards, and finally, his Silvally went down to 1 Blizzard. Hal is up next, and he starts off with a Raichu. I go for Hail, and he goes for Focus Blast, taking about a third of my health away. I go for Hex, just barely missing the kill. He gets off another Focus Blast, taking me to about 1/5 of my health. He ends up getting hit by Hail and faints. Up next is Incineroar. I really didn't have any good moves against this Pokemon, so I just went for a Blizzard, taking a third of his health away, and also landing a Freeze on him in the process. I finished him off with Blizzard and Hex. I gotta admit, the crit on the Hex was a little BM game. The Fire type is already frozen, so there's no point in rubbing salt in the wound anymore. Kamal is up next. I resetted the Hail, and he tries to go for a Wood Hammer, but just can't land one. He ends up going down to a Blizzard and an Extra Sensory. Lastly is Leafeon, and he goes down to a Blizzard. Well, that was an easy finish. Up next is the Elite Four, and I feel like I gotta grind a couple more levels in order to beat them. We have to go against Olivia and Hala again, both of which are going to be rough for us, so I grinded up to level 98 and used 2 PowerPoint ups on Blizzard. Alright, let's start with Kahali, and she starts off with Skarmory, and I go for Hail as she goes for Steel Wing, taking me to about half health. I went for Blizzard, taking her down. And that's really the same story for the rest of her Pokemon. I just kept using Blizzard and taking them down. The Hail stopped for Crobat, but I just took him down with an Extra Sensory. Acerole's up next, and she had a very similar story to Kahali. I forgot to use Elixir on Blizzard, so I'm down 4 power points, but I don't really need them. I set up Hail, and then either used Blizzard or Dark Pulse to take her Pokemon down. Alright, Olivia time. And this fight went pretty bad. It's kind of the same reason as the last time we fought her. That Rock type Z move just crushes us. And what makes it even worse now is that she starts off with a Relicanth that uses Yawn, which can stall out my Hail. I can't beat her like this, so I retired this Elite Four run to switch up my strategy. Luckily, most of my moves are TMs, and we have access to the move relearner, so it's really easy to swap moves in and out. I tried teaching Vulpix Protect to see if I could protect through either the Z move or the Yawn. And yeah, that didn't really work. See, the Z move breaks through Protect, and even though I can live it, she still can just finish me off the next turn. Not only that, but this is only her second Pokemon. We still got 3 more Pokemon after this, so I need to change up my strategy again. So next I leveled up Vulpix to level 100 and gave her a Chesto Berry to wake up from the sleep. I also swapped in Double Team and Ice Beam. I felt like I was being a little too reliant on Blizzard Hail, so let's give this a shot. Yeah, this strategy didn't work either, but for different reasons. See, after I set up enough double teams, she'll switch in Probopass to paralyze me. This makes me slower than her Lycanroc, so he can get the Z move off first. Alright, time for a different strategy. So I retaught Vulpix Sheer Cold, and her Probopass has Sturdy, which completely counters it. Even when he's already hurt, I can't hit him with it. I knew that Sturdy stopped it from being taken out in a single hit, but I didn't realize that it completely stops one-hit KO moves. But then I got this run. She starts off with a Relicanth. I used Sheer Cold on both her Relicanth and Lycanroc because these two were the real problem Pokemon. After this, I stopped using Sheer Cold and even replaced it after the battle. Carbink is out next and uses Reflect as I set up double teams. She eventually gets a Power Gem off on me, but it only takes a fifth of my health. I went for Ice Beam, taking over half of her health away. She swaps into Probopass as I go for another Ice Beam. I used Ice Beam again and got a freeze. She healed him up as I kept going for Ice Beams. I ran out of power points on Ice Beam, so I switched over to Extra Sentry. She eventually goes down. Carbink's out next, and my strategy has not changed at this point. I just kept using Extra Sentry until her Carbink goes down. Alright, it's on to Hollow now. He starts off with a Hariyama and goes for a Fake Out, flinching me. I went for an Extra Sentry, taking him down to about quarter health. He uses Close Combat and takes me down to 6 health, and nearly knocks me out. I went for another Extra Sentry, taking him down. Crabominal's up next, and he goes down to an Extra Sentry. His other Pokemon were a similar story. I just kept using Extra Sentry and they kept going down. Poliwrath comes out next, and he takes an Extra Sentry, living on a quarter health. He goes for Submission and misses. He keeps healing up as I keep using Extra Sentry until he goes down. I gotta be honest, I thought that fight was going to be a lot harder than it actually was. After that, I redid the other Elite Four members real quick. And with that, we were able to beat all the Elite Four. But now we have to battle Kukui, and this was a pretty brutal battle, but fun in a weird way. See, I can beat a couple of his Pokemon no problem. Really, it's his Magnezone and Snorlax that are the problem Pokemon. Both of them can take me out in a couple hits, but I feel like there's this good back and forth with the battle. Anyway, with this battle, I frequently changed up my movesets until I landed on this kind of wacky set, where I had 3 ice moves and a double team. And I got this run. He starts off with a Lycanroc. I can't set up or mess around with this Pokemon because he'll take me out fast. I immediately take him out with an Ice Beam. Magnezone's up next, and I started setting up double teams. He was able to paralyze me, but I'm holding a berry that cures that. I set up another double team and Hail while he misses Thunder Waves. He keeps trying to Thunder Wave me, but eventually goes down to Ice Beam. Braviary is up next and goes down to an Ice Beam. Next up is Snorlax. I use Blizzard as he lands a Heavy Slam on me, nearly taking me out. The Hail stopped, so I used Ice Beam, which ended up freezing him. I set up Hail and just started setting up more double teams. At this point, I'm trying to whittle away some of his health with Hail so I can finish him off without him healing up. I used Ice Beam, just barely missing the knockout, and he thaws and misses Body Slam. Luckily though, he gets knocked out by the Hail. The Decidueye is up next, and he goes down to a Blizzard. Lastly is his Ninetales. I keep using Double Team to wait out the Hail because she also has the Snow Cloak ability. She keeps using Dazzling Gleam but just can't land one. Once the Hail ran out, I used Ice Beam, taking her to about quarter health, then finished her off with another Ice Beam. And with that, we've defeated Professor Kukui, and we've beaten Pokémon Sun with only an Alolan Vulpix. That was a fun run. It started off a little difficult with Hal and the 2 Kahuna fights, but after Olivia, the run got a lot easier, especially with the other 2 Kahuna battles. I was expecting the Totem Pokemon to be the hardest part of the run, but most of them were easy in retrospect. But it was pretty cool seeing some double strategies with the Totem Pokemon, like how Alomomola could use Healing Pulse on the Totem Wishiwashi to heal him up. But with that, thank you so much for watching the video. leave a like if you like the video, subscribe to see more, and I'll see you around. Take care.